Welcome to Planetary Calendar's Astro Portraits. I'm Ralph Demetrius, one of the astrologers. This week, we're going to look at the chart of Kamala Harris, who, of course, was elected as our first woman vice president. And it's a wonderful chart that she is a Libran, the sign of the laws, with a Aries moon, a dynamic moon, and Gemini rising. And Gemini is oftentimes also related to attorneys because it's about advocacy. And in many ways, I feel that she's someone who has truly lived her chart. And you see that with people who are highly motivated, highly actualized. They truly live their chart. They express all of the different components that are there. They take advantage of all the resources that the chart represents. And that's the difference with people. We all have these talents. You could call them our geniuses, and the major planets are these particular geniuses. But how many people work on developing them? You know, it's not enough to have a talent for art if you never take the time to learn how to draw, right? It doesn't matter if you have a wonderful voice if you don't take the time to really learn how to sing. And she's someone who has very much projected her talents, and the people in her life have played very clear roles. Now, because she has Gemini rising, she has the sun in the fifth house, which is a house of great expression. And it's funny, it's actually a position I've seen before in people who go into public service, which is funny because we always think of the fifth house as the house of personal enjoyment and love and romance. And it shows that they're projecting the sun, which in its own house, the fifth house, a full expression of their love. And yet it's a love that they share to a much larger group than to an individual. And yet it's funny when you see photos of her, the number of times when you don't see her smiling are in the minority. And that's at the times when she's prosecuting someone, she's interrogating someone, which is not surprising that she's good at it because the sun is at 27 degrees Libra, fairly close to the star Spica, the feminine archetype, the brightest star in Virgo. But her Mercury is at 1 degree Scorpio. And you know, the first degree of a sign is powerful. It's got all the juice, right? In Scorpio, the sign is the interrogator, right? In the sixth house, the house of her basic skills, that which she's basically good at. She is good at digging down into what's beneath the surface. That's what Mercury in Scorpio does. It likes to get down beneath the surface, right? And find out what's underneath there and keep digging until she finds it. She also has Neptune in Scorpio there. And remember, Scorpio is one of the fixed signs, and the fixed signs have to do with the systems that we use as a society. So Scorpio has to do with our shared laws to a certain extent. In the sixth house, Neptune very much represents the federal government. It's an idea. It's a shared belief. It shows that in the sixth house, one of her basic skills is her understanding of the law. This is someone who's read very, very deeply in how law functions, how the law works. I mean, she was the district attorney of San Francisco. She was the attorney general of California, the second largest, legal system in the country. She's been a senator. She understands law. She takes this seriously. She believes in them. Now, her moon in Aries is in the 11th house. And this is fascinating because she is a partile full moon child. You don't see that very often, but when you see it, it's powerful. Her sun and moon are at 27 degrees. So her moon is at 27 degrees Aries. It shows a very highly elevated female, a woman, her mother, in her life. In the 11th house, the house of change. Her mother was born in India, came to the United States as a young woman to become educated, very independent, raised her children, her two daughters, by herself, Aries, solo, powerful, elevated, right? And she was very involved in social activism. The 11th house, that who changes things up. So this is, and she oftentimes, Kamala oftentimes talks about her icon, her mother, what a powerful figure she was in her chart. Now, when a person is born at night, when the sun is below the horizon, the moon is many times stronger than the sun, especially so when the moon is above the horizon. In other words, at the time when she was born, which was after sundown, on October 20th, 1964, in Oakland, California, the moon was shining overhead, in fact, rising relatively high in the east. And it was the full moon. It was very dramatic. And her mother had a very dramatic influence on her life, and it embodied her to be a very dramatic woman in the social sphere. It's the 11th house. It's the area of community. She's always important to her community. Remember, the 11th house is the house of the common good, the overall community. Now, she has Gemini rising, right, which goes back to that Mercury in Scorpio. So it's controlled from the 6th house, Mercury in Scorpio. She has the North Node at the rising, 24 degrees Gemini, conjunct, of course, across the way, the descendant at 27 or 24 degrees Sagittarius at the descendant, where, because she's a full moon child, the part of fortune is conjunct the 7th house cusp, Sagittarius. What's the 7th house? The 7th house is laws. She makes her money through the law, through the cooperative venture, but also in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, of course, is the house of attorneys, the 9th house, the house of advocates, of the professional. So she makes her living through her professional work in the laws. I mean, it can't get much more clear than that. Who else is in the 7th house in Sagittarius? Pallas Athena, which is an asteroid known for advocacy, for high-level skills in Sagittarius, and Juno in Sagittarius, the spouse. Who's she married to? Another attorney. No, it's really funny. It's in the 7th house, the area of partnership. They're both Librans, both born in Libra, within days of each other. They really are paired to each other. And his work is, he's an entertainment attorney from Los Angeles, which is very different from her work. His chart is, very different in orientation, and yet in some core ways, because they're born so close together, they're very, very similar. And of course, one of the things that comes up is they love discussing the law. This was something you saw with Michelle and Barack Obama, two attorneys who like discussing the law. It's helpful. Like myself and Lonnie, we love talking about astrology, so it makes us very productive. Now, what about her father? Saturn. Saturn, highly elevated in the chart in Aquarius, right? It's one of the ruling signs, the extrovert, masculine sign. Aquarius, but retrograde. And here's a classic situation where in the 9th house also, the 9th house of the professor, he is a professor. Retrograde oftentimes with Saturn means that the father was not there. The mother raised the children alone. The father was not there. He was removed from their lives. In Aquarius, in the 9th house, a professor, but removed from their life, but still a prominent figure in their life, in her life, in the children's life, in that he, I'm sure, provided support. He was an educated man who probably, was an image to them, a structure, a person, but removed. Right next to that is the midheaven in the 10th house, of course. In Pisces, once again, government, right? 2 degrees Pisces, conjunct Vesta, the sense of mission, She has this torch burning over her head. Compassionate mission for the common good, for the compassionate. Chiron's also there. There's ways in which she understands the wound of the common people. In fact, during her debates, and when she said to Joe Biden, who she then went on to serve as his vice president, I was one of those little girls getting on the bus to be bussed. I was one of those little girls. She was there. She walked that pathway. She felt the wounds of being, a stranger in a strange land, of having a mother and father. Her father was from Jamaica, her mother was from India, being the children of immigrants with different color skin than what she saw on the television. She understands that wound. What's amazing too, and to step back a little bit, that nodal axis. When you have the nodal axis right on the ascendant descendant, one, it shows a very strong sense of a strong connection to the matrilineal line. And whenever you see pictures of her with her family, it's all women. It's all women. Because remember, she went home to India, to her mother's home in India. She's from Oakland. Her home is California. She went home to India and it's in touch with this. But there's also a very strong sense, because of Sagittarius, the nodal axis, of a sense of fate. And it's funny because, what's fate? Well, how much of it means it's pre-design. There's a tremendous sense that there's pre-design, that this person was destined to make history in a certain way. And it's such a positive chart in so many ways that you feel that it's a very beneficial thing. Now, Jupiter, right, is a rising planet. It's actually in the 12th house in Taurus, 24 degrees Taurus, which is conjunct within 1 degree Algol in the 12th house. So it's above the horizon. So below the moon rising, Jupiter was rising. It's loosely on the Gogolon spot, and it's once again in the house of compassion in government. So you have this sense of her being an advocate again. It repeats this. Being close to Algol, being in the 12th house, it means there's the burden of that. When you want to run for office, everything you've done in the past, all of your past, comes back to haunt you in tweets and articles. And you have to justify all this. It's kind of like getting to the gates of heaven and having to say, well, what about this and what about that? Should we really let you in? Symbolically, not actually. But I think that's part of the burden that she feels. It's the same pain that she feels through her career. She feels for people. It's funny that Sun-Moon opposition, it allows her to see both sides. Oh, one final point I got to touch on. She has Mars and Leo in the 3rd house. 3rd house, once again, advocacy, discussion. It is one of the reasons why she made a wonderful attorney. She's actually a great performer. Mars and Leo loves to perform. It has no problem stepping on a stage. There's no problem whatsoever stepping on the stage. It just walks out. It doesn't think twice about it. So it's a fascinating chart and a remarkable person. So I hope you found it illuminating. Make sure you come back and see us on Tuesdays for our portraits. Come back and see us on Fridays for our forecast for the coming week. If you forgot to get your book or your calendar, you can find those at planetarycalendar.com. And of course, visit our YouTube channel, Planetary Calendar Astrology, and please subscribe because it's a big help to us. And that way you make sure you get your forecast and your portraits. Thanks so much and be well.